The Larimar Woods were vast and mysterious, filled with ancient trees whose canopies seemed to touch the sky. For Ellie Mayfield, a 7-year-old girl with a mop of golden curls and a boundless curiosity, the woods were her playground. She spent her days chasing fireflies, gathering flowers, and imagining herself as the hero of grand adventures. One late afternoon, as the sun cast its golden rays through the trees, Ellie heard a sound unlike any other. A soft, pained whimper drifted through the woods. It wasn't the cry of a fox or a bird, nor the low growl of a wolf. It was something unfamiliar, something sad. Ellie paused, her basket of wildflowers forgotten as she followed the sound. Her small boots crunched softly on the forest floor, the noise guiding her deeper into the woods than she had ever dared to go. The trees grew thicker, the air cooler, and the golden light dimmer. Then she saw it. Tangled in a bed of broken branches and leaves was a creature she had only ever seen in storybooks. A baby dragon, no bigger than a horse, lay sprawled in the clearing. Its sleek black scales shimmered faintly in the fading light, and its wings, one bent at an awkward angle, twitched feebly. The creature's large golden eyes, filled with pain and fear, flicked toward Ellie as she stepped into view. Ellie gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh no," she whispered, her heart breaking at the sight. "You're hurt," the dragon growled weakly, its body trembling as it tried to move. Its leg was bent unnaturally, a jagged break visible through its scales. The creature flinched as Ellie approached, a faint plume of smoke escaping its nostrils in a feeble attempt at intimidation. But Ellie wasn't afraid. Her small hands reached out slowly, her voice soft. "It's okay," she said. "I'm not going to hurt you, I promise." The dragon's growl faded into a low whimper, its golden eyes watching her cautiously. Ellie knelt beside it, her tiny hands brushing against its unbroken wing. "You poor thing," she murmured. "Who left you all alone?" She didn't know why or how this magnificent creature had ended up here, injured and abandoned, but she knew one thing for certain: she wasn't going to leave it. Ellie's first challenge was convincing the dragon to trust her. She stayed by its side for hours, speaking softly and offering pieces of dried fruit from her pocket. At first, the dragon refused, turning its head away. But as the sun dipped below the horizon and the woods grew colder, its resolve began to waver. "You must be so hungry," Ellie said gently, holding out a slice of apple. The dragon hesitated, its nostrils flaring as it sniffed the offering. Finally, it leaned forward, its tongue flicking out to snatch the fruit from her hand. Ellie beamed. "See? I told you I wouldn't hurt you." The dragon chewed slowly, its golden eyes never leaving hers. It let out a soft rumble, a sound that Ellie decided wasn't a growl, but something more. Appreciative. "I think you need a name," Ellie said, tilting her head as she studied the creature. "How about Nyx? It means night, like your pretty black scales." Nyx blinked at her, and though it didn't speak, Ellie decided it liked the name. She spent the rest of the evening tending to Nyx as best as her small hands could manage. Using sticks and strips of fabric from her dress, she fashioned a crude splint for its broken leg. "This might hurt a little," she said as she worked, her voice full of apology. Nyx flinched but didn't protest, as if understanding that Ellie was trying to help. When the splint was in place, Ellie sat beside Nyx, leaning against its warm body. The dragon's breathing was slow and steady, its golden eyes half closed as it rested. Ellie ran her fingers gently over its uninjured wing, marveling at the smoothness of its scales. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. "I'll take care of you." As the stars began to fill the sky, Ellie made a silent promise. No matter what it took, she would protect Nyx. Morning light filtered through the dense canopy of Larimar Woods, casting a soft golden glow over the clearing where Ellie Mayfield and Nyx lay. The baby dragon stirred first, its golden eyes blinking open as it stretched its uninjured wing. It winced as the crude splint on its broken leg shifted, letting out a low whimper that immediately roused Ellie. "You're awake," Ellie exclaimed, sitting up quickly. She wiped the sleep from her eyes and smiled at the dragon. "Good morning, Nyx." Nyx rumbled softly in response, its gaze locked on the little girl who had spent the entire night by its side. Ellie reached into the small satchel she had brought, pulling out more dried fruit and some strips of meat her grandmother had packed for her outings. She offered the food to Nyx, who sniffed it cautiously before snapping up the meat with surprising delicacy. "That's better," Ellie said, watching as the dragon ate. "You'll need your strength if we're going to fix you up properly." Determined to care for her new friend, Ellie set out to gather more supplies. She scoured the forest for anything that might help. Soft moss for bedding, sturdy sticks to reinforce the splint, and herbs she had seen her grandmother use for cuts and bruises. When she returned, Nyx watched her with a curious tilt of its head, as if puzzled by her dedication. "Don't look at me like that," Ellie said, setting down her collection of supplies. "You're my friend now, and friends take care of each other." The dragon huffed softly, its breath warming the air between them. Ellie couldn't help but laugh. "I'll take that as a thank you." She spent the rest of the day carefully cleaning Nyx's wounds, using water from a nearby stream and the herbs she had gathered. The dragon flinched occasionally, but never lashed out, its trust in Ellie growing with every gentle touch. She reinforced the splint on its leg, making it sturdier and more comfortable. "You're going to be up and flying in no time," she said confidently, though she wasn't entirely sure if that was true. Still, Nyx seemed to believe her, its golden eyes filled with a quiet determination. As the sun set, Ellie curled up beside Nyx, her head resting against its warm body. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered, her voice soft but firm. "I'll take care of you, no matter what." In the days that followed, Ellie and Nyx settled into a routine. Each morning, Ellie would forage for food and fresh water while Nyx rested. When she returned, they would share their meal, the bond between them strengthening with every passing day. Nyx began to trust her completely, its wariness replaced by a deep affection for the little girl who had saved it. One afternoon, as Ellie adjusted the splint on Nyx's leg, the dragon let out a low, questioning rumble. Ellie tilted her head, smiling. "What is it, Nyx? Do you want to try moving?" The dragon huffed softly, its gaze shifting to its injured leg. Ellie hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Okay, but we'll go slow. I don't want you to hurt yourself." With Ellie's guidance, Nyx pushed itself upright, its body trembling slightly from the effort. The dragon's wings flared for balance as it tested its weight on the splinted leg. Ellie stood beside it, her hands ready to steady the creature if needed. "You're doing great," she encouraged, her voice filled with pride. Nyx took a tentative step, its claws sinking into the soft earth. It let out a low growl, more of frustration than pain, but Ellie placed a reassuring hand on its side. "It's okay. You're strong, Nyx. You'll get there." The dragon huffed again, this time with determination, and took another step. Slowly but surely, it began to move around the clearing, its confidence growing with each stride. Ellie clapped her hands, her excitement contagious. "You're amazing, Nyx. I knew you could do it." As the dragon grew stronger, it began to test its wings as well. Ellie watched in awe as Nyx flapped them experimentally, the powerful gusts stirring the leaves around them. Though it couldn't yet take flight, the sight of Nyx stretching its wings filled Ellie with hope. One evening, as they sat together under the stars, Ellie leaned against Nyx, her hand resting on its uninjured wing. "You know," she said softly, "I think we were meant to find each other. I was always looking for an adventure, but I never imagined it would be like this." Nyx turned its head to look at her, its golden eyes glowing in the moonlight. It let out a low, affectionate rumble, its way of agreeing with her. Ellie smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest that she had never felt before. She wrapped her arms around the dragon's neck, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're going to be okay, Nyx. As long as we have each other, we'll be okay." The dragon rumbled again, nuzzling her gently. In that moment, Ellie knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she and Nyx would face them together. Their bond was unbreakable, forged in the fire of adversity and strengthened by the love and trust they shared. The bond between Ellie Mayfield and Nyx grew stronger with each passing day. Nyx's leg healed slowly but steadily, thanks to Ellie's tireless care. The young dragon could now move more freely, even attempting small leaps and glides, though true flight was still out of reach. Ellie, ever watchful, cheered its progress, her laughter filling the once silent clearing of Larimar Woods. But their peaceful days were about to end. One fateful afternoon, as Ellie gathered wild berries near a stream, a low hum began to vibrate through the air. She froze, her basket dropping to the ground as she scanned the sky. Her heart sank when she spotted it, a sleek, metallic drone hovering above the trees, its lens-like eyes scanning the forest floor. The drone's hum grew louder as it moved closer, its sensors locking onto the clearing where Nyx rested. The dragon, sensing the disturbance, growled and spread its wings, its instincts kicking in. Despite its still healing leg, Nyx tried to leap into the air but stumbled, its wings flapping in frustration. Ellie dashed back to the clearing, her voice urgent. "Nyx! No! Stay down!" The drone emitted a sharp beep, signaling its discovery to whoever had sent it. Ellie's mind raced. She had heard stories of these drones, Imperial scouts that reported back to the Galactic Empire. If they had found Nyx, it was only a matter of time before they sent more. "Come on, Nyx," Ellie urged, grabbing the dragon's reins she had fashioned from vines. "We have to move, now." Nyx growled but obeyed, limping as Ellie led it deeper into the forest. The drone pursued them, its metallic hum growing louder. Ellie turned, her heart pounding, and picked up a fallen branch. "Stay away from us," she shouted, throwing the branch at the drone. The branch struck the drone's sensor, causing it to veer off course momentarily. Nyx, emboldened by Ellie's bravery, released a weak but fiery breath. The flames engulfed the drone, sending it crashing to the forest floor in a shower of sparks. Ellie dropped to her knees beside Nyx, her hands trembling as she stroked its neck. "Good job, Nyx," she whispered. "But this isn't over. We need to find somewhere safer." The drone's destruction was a small victory, but Ellie knew the signal it sent before crashing would alert the Empire. She had to act fast. With Nyx at her side, she navigated deeper into the Larimar woods, where the trees grew so dense that sunlight barely penetrated. This part of the forest was known as the Elder's Vale, a place of legends and mystery. As they reached a secluded glade surrounded by towering trees, Ellie paused to catch her breath. Nyx, despite its injuries, stood protectively beside her, its golden eyes scanning their surroundings. "We'll rest here," Ellie said, though her voice was tinged with worry. "Just for a little while." Their respite was short-lived. The low hum of engines shattered the silence, followed by the unmistakable clang of armored boots on the forest floor. The Empire had arrived. Through the thick trees, Ellie could see figures in black and silver armor, Imperial soldiers equipped with energy rifles and advanced tracking gear. At their head was a tall, imposing alien officer with a cruel smirk. Ellie's heart raced. "Nyx, we have to hide," she whispered, leading the dragon behind a cluster of thick, moss-covered rocks. The officer's voice carried through the woods. "We know you're here, little one, and we know you've got something that belongs to us." Ellie clenched her fists, anger flaring alongside her fear. Nyx didn't belong to anyone, least of all the Empire. She peeked out from behind the rocks, her mind racing. She couldn't fight them. Not alone, and not with Nyx still healing. But she couldn't let them take her friend either. The soldiers spread out, their weapons ready. One of them stepped closer to the rocks where Ellie and Nyx were hiding. Ellie held her breath, her hand resting on Nyx's neck to keep it calm. The dragon's body tensed, its instincts telling it to fight. The soldier raised his rifle, his voice sharp. "Come out, or we'll flush you out." Before Ellie could respond, Nyx lunged. The dragon's roar shook the glade as it sprang from their hiding place, its claws slashing at the soldier's weapon. The rifle clattered to the ground as Nyx released a fiery breath, forcing the other soldiers to scatter. "Nyx, no!" Ellie cried, but it was too late. The Imperial officer barked an order and the soldiers opened fire. Nyx dodged as best it could, its injured legs slowing its movements. Energy bolts scorched the ground around them, sending Ellie diving for cover. She watched in horror as Nyx stumbled, a bolt grazing its side. The dragon let out a pained roar, its golden eyes flicking toward Ellie. Desperation filled her chest as she scrambled to her feet, her mind racing for a way to help. Then she remembered the legends of the Elder's Vale, of the ancient magic said to slumber within its heart. "Nyx, this way," she shouted, waving her arms to get the dragon's attention. Nyx followed her, its steps faltering but determined. Together, they raced deeper into the glade, the Imperial soldiers hot on their heels. Ellie's lungs burned, her legs aching as she pushed herself forward. At last, they reached the center of the glade, where an enormous tree stood, its roots twisted like ancient serpents, and its trunk glowed faintly with an otherworldly light. Ellie didn't hesitate. She placed her hands on the tree's bark, her voice trembling but firm. "Please," she whispered, "help us." The ground beneath them rumbled, and the air grew thick with energy. The soldiers froze, their weapons raised as the tree's roots began to move. They coiled around the soldiers, pulling them into the earth as the Imperial officer shouted in fury. Nyx, sensing the power of the glade, released a triumphant roar. Its body shimmered with the same faint light as the tree, its injuries fading before Ellie's eyes. The dragon spread its wings, their span more powerful and magnificent than ever. Ellie stared in awe, tears streaming down her face. "You're healed," she whispered. Nyx nuzzled her gently, its golden eyes filled with gratitude. Together, they turned to face the remaining soldiers, who had begun to retreat in terror. The Empire, for all its might, had underestimated the bond between a girl, her dragon, and the forest they now called home. The forest of Elder's Vale pulsed with an ancient, unearthly energy as Ellie Mayfield and Nyx prepared for what was to come. The remaining Imperial soldiers, though shaken by the glade's response to their presence, had regrouped under the command of the alien officer. The sky above the dense canopy shimmered ominously as Imperial dropships descended, carrying reinforcements. The low hum of their engines vibrated through the air, a dire reminder of the Empire's relentless pursuit. Nyx stood tall beside Ellie, its shimmering black scales reflecting the faint glow of the magical tree that had healed it. The baby dragon no longer looked as fragile or weak as when Ellie had first found it. Though still young, Nyx exuded a growing confidence, its golden eyes burning with determination. Ellie gripped the dragon's reins, fashioned from sturdy vines, her small hands trembling not with fear, but with resolve. "We're not running this time, Nyx," she whispered, her voice firm. "This is our home now, and we'll protect it." Nyx growled softly, lowering its head to nuzzle her shoulder. The bond between them had grown into something extraordinary, a silent understanding that transcended words. Together, they faced the approaching threat, ready to stand their ground. The first wave of Imperial soldiers entered the glade cautiously, their energy rifles aimed at the tree. The officer barked orders, his voice sharp and commanding. "Surround the target. The dragon is secondary. The tree is what we need." Ellie's heart sank. She realized that the Imperials hadn't come solely for Nyx. They had recognized the power of the Elder's Vale and intended to exploit it. The tree, with its mysterious magic, was as much a target as the dragon itself. "Not a chance," Ellie muttered under her breath. The soldiers advanced, their boots crunching against the mossy ground. Nyx let out a warning roar, its wings flaring wide as it stepped forward to shield Ellie and the tree. The soldiers hesitated for a moment, their nerves visibly shaken by the sight of the dragon's imposing presence. "Open fire," the officer commanded. Blasts of energy lit up the glade, the bolts sizzling as they struck the ground and the tree's protective roots. Nyx moved with surprising agility, using its wings to deflect incoming fire. It unleashed a burst of golden flame, forcing the soldiers to scatter. The air crackled with tension as the battle began in earnest. Ellie darted between the thick roots, her small frame making her a difficult target. She grabbed a slingshot from her satchel, a crude but effective tool she had fashioned from supplies in the forest. Using sharp stones as ammunition, she aimed at the soldiers' helmets and visors, disrupting their aim. "You're not taking Nyx or the tree," she shouted, her voice carrying across the battlefield. Nyx lunged forward, its claws slashing through the soldiers' ranks. Though still young and smaller than the fully grown dragons of legend, it fought with a ferocity that belied its age. Flames erupted from its mouth, creating barriers of fire that separated the soldiers from the tree. The Imperials brought in heavier reinforcements. Hover tanks rumbled into the glade, Hestep, their massive cannons aimed at Nyx. The dragon growled, its golden eyes narrowing as it prepared to defend itself. "Ellie, move." Nyx's telepathic voice filled her mind, the words resonating with urgency. Ellie darted behind the tree, her heart pounding as the tanks fired. The blast struck the magical roots, but instead of breaking, the roots absorbed the energy, glowing brighter with each impact. The tree seemed to awaken fully, its power surging through the glade. The roots rose like serpents, coiling around the tanks and crushing them with ease. The Imperial soldiers screamed as they were swept aside by the tree's defenses, their weapons useless against its ancient magic. The alien officer, undeterred, barked more orders. "Target the dragon. Take it down." Nyx, sensing the renewed focus on itself, turned its attention to the soldiers. It let out a thunderous roar, its voice reverberating through the glade. Flames erupted from its mouth, creating a wall of fire that forced the soldiers to retreat. "Ellie," Nyx called telepathically. "We must end this now." Ellie's mind raced. She spotted one of the tanks still intact but disabled, its cannon pointed toward the sky. An idea sparked. "Nyx, can you lift me up there?" Nyx hesitated for only a moment before lowering its head. Ellie climbed onto the dragon's back, her small hands gripping the reins tightly. With a powerful leap, Nyx soared into the air, its wings beating against the heavy atmosphere. Ellie reached the tank's turret, her fingers fumbling as she activated the manual override. She aimed the cannon at the Empire's command dropship hovering just above the trees. "This is for Nyx," she shouted as she fired. The blast struck the dropship's engines, sending it spiraling out of control. The ship crashed into the forest, the explosion lighting up the glade. The remaining soldiers, witnessing the destruction of their command, began to retreat in chaos. Nyx landed gracefully beside the tree, its body glowing faintly with the magic of the Elder's Veil. Ellie slid off its back, her legs trembling from the adrenaline. Together they watched as the Imperials fled, their forces broken and defeated. The glade grew quiet once more, the tree's roots returning to their resting place. Nyx lowered its head, nuzzling Ellie gently. "You are brave," it said telepathically, its voice filled with pride. Ellie smiled, wrapping her arms around the dragon's neck. "We did it, Nyx, together." The Elder's Veil, once a forgotten part of Larimar Woods, now stood as a sanctuary protected by an unbreakable bond. A little girl and her dragon, united in love and courage. The victory in the Elder's Veil was short-lived. Though the soldiers had retreated and their dropship lay in smoldering ruins, Ellie Mayfield knew the Galactic Empire would not accept defeat so easily. Nyx, the now stronger Zarathian baby dragon, stood proudly by her side, its golden eyes scanning the horizon for any lingering threats. "Ellie," Nyx's telepathic voice resonated softly in her mind. "More will come. They won't stop." Ellie, though only 7 years old, carried the weight of a warrior in her heart. She tightened her grip on Nyx's reins, gazing at the towering, magical tree that had saved them. "Then we won't stop either, Nyx, not until they leave us alone." The Empire had sent a distress signal before their retreat. Now, the air crackled with tension as the sound of approaching engines filled the sky. Ellie and Nyx looked up to see a fleet of Imperial ships breaking through the dense canopy. This was no reconnaissance mission. It was an all-out assault. Hovercrafts descended into the glade, unloading waves of shock troopers armed with energy weapons. Following them were crawler mechs, spider-like machines equipped with plasma cannons and reinforced armor. At the center of it all was the Dreadlord Eryx, a towering alien with a cybernetic arm and eyes that glowed with menace. Eryx stepped forward, his booming voice amplified by a communicator. "Surrender the dragon and the veil, child, and you may yet walk away with your life." Ellie stood defiantly, her small frame dwarfed by the towering figure before her. "Nyx isn't yours to take, neither is this place. Go back to your empire." The soldiers raised their weapons and Eryx sneered, "You've made your choice." The battle began with an earth-shaking roar from Nyx. The dragon leapt into action, its powerful wings creating gusts of wind that knocked soldiers off their feet. Flames erupted from its mouth, engulfing the first wave of troopers. Ellie, armed with her slingshot and stones enchanted by the veil's magic, darted between the roots of the great tree, taking out troopers with precision. The crawler mechs advanced, their plasma cannons firing in unison. Nyx soared above the blasts, dodging with agility that belied its size. It struck back with its claws and fiery breath, but the mech's reinforced armor absorbed much of the damage. "Ellie!" Nyx called telepathically. "The mechs, their cores are exposed at the back." Ellie's sharp eyes quickly found the glowing weak points. "I see them," she replied, her voice filled with determination. She climbed onto Nyx's back, and the dragon launched into the air, carrying her toward the nearest mech. With Nyx's help, Ellie leapt onto the machine, prying open its core panel and shoving an enchanted stone inside. "Take this," she shouted as the stone pulsed with energy, detonating the mech in a blinding explosion. One by one, Ellie and Nyx worked together to dismantle the crawler mechs, but the Imperial forces kept advancing. The Veil's tree, sensing the danger, awakened fully, Its roots surged from the ground, ensnaring soldiers and mechs alike, buying Ellie and Nyx precious time. Dreadlord Eryx, unfazed by the chaos, activated his cybernetic arm, which transformed into a massive plasma blade. He charged at Nyx, his movements swift and deadly. The dragon barely dodged the first strike, the blade scorching the air where it had stood. "You are nothing more than an abomination," Eryx sneered, swinging his blade again. "You belong to the Empire." Nyx roared, its claws clashing against the blade, sparks flying with each strike. Ellie, perched on the dragon's back, fired enchanted stones at Eryx, but the alien's armor deflected her attacks. "Nyx, we have to end this now," Ellie shouted, gripping the reins tightly. "Take us to the tree." Nyx darted toward the great tree, its wings carrying them swiftly through the glade. The dragon landed at its base, turning to face Eryx as he pursued them. Ellie slid off Nyx's back, her hand resting on the tree's glowing bark. "Please," she whispered to the veil, "help us one last time." The tree responded with a deep, resonating hum. Its roots surged upward, creating a protective barrier around Ellie and Nyx. Eryx snarled, slicing through the roots with his plasma blade, but the tree's magic was relentless. The roots regrew faster than he could destroy them, encircling him like a predator trapping its prey. "Ellie," Nyx said, its voice calm yet urgent. "We must act now." Ellie nodded, her mind racing. She climbed back onto Nyx's back, and the dragon leapt into the air, soaring high above the glade. The tree's energy flowed through them, filling them with a power unlike anything they had felt before. Nyx's scales shimmered with golden light as it unleashed a torrent of flames infused with the veil's magic. The flames struck Eryx, engulfing him in a blinding inferno. His screams echoed through the glade as the fire consumed him, his armor melting under the intense heat. The remaining Imperial forces, witnessing the destruction of their leader, broke ranks and fled. The veil's roots extended beyond the glade, blocking their escape routes and ensuring that none could return to the Empire with knowledge of the dragon or the tree. When the last of the soldiers were gone, the glade fell silent. The tree's roots receded, and its glow dimmed. Returning to a peaceful slumber, Nyx landed gracefully beside the tree, its golden eyes meeting Ellie's. "We did it," Ellie said, her voice trembling with relief. She slid off Nyx's back and wrapped her arms around the dragon's neck. "We really did it," Nyx rumbled softly, nuzzling her with affection. "Together," it said, the single word carrying the weight of their shared victory. The settlers of Marrow's Reach, having heard the commotion, arrived at the glade to find Ellie and Nyx standing triumphantly beside the great tree. They stared in awe at the young girl and her dragon, their hearts filled with gratitude and pride. From that day forward, Ellie and Nyx became legends. Their story spread across the stars, inspiring others to stand against tyranny and protect the bonds that make life worth fighting for. Together, they had not only saved the Veil but also ignited a spark of hope in a galaxy long overshadowed by fear.